You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 88. My name is Clark from 5 Card Guys on Instagram, and with me is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John, who is Trade You at Recess. So off the top for today's episode, there was another big sale in the hobby. This time, it was the iconic T206 Honus Wagner, graded PSA 1.5, which sold for $3.72 million. That's a nice increase from last May when it sold for $2.28 million at Heritage Auctions. Yeah, if you guys remember. So over $1 million, almost a $1.5 million increase. Wanted to ask you guys what you guys thought of that sale price. You know, do you think is vintage the way to go in this bear market, or is the T206 Wagner just in its own category?
I think there's a bit of truth both ways. I think one, the purchaser, whoever bought it and flipped it, incredible. Like, good on you. You just, cleared $1.5 million in profit, by holding a piece of cardboard. So that's one thing. Always trust your gut. I'm sure a lot of people are giving him a lot of crap for that, but it's funny how that all works out, right? But overall, I think it's really good for the hobby. It's a good long sign for the hobby, in my opinion. It's people are seeing it as a long-term asset, right, and long-term investment, and I think that it only helps to show that the hobby is real. As in terms of a long-term investment strategy, I think there's a lot of, and that's why you're seeing it in vintage. And we kind of talked about this on our earlier shows, that vintage would be probably the first thing that would correct itself in a positive way, because there's so many deals out there before, and what guys have accomplished from a baseball perspective in terms of the history of baseball, and you talk about that Honus Wagner card. I mean, the guy was born in the 1870s, and it's just a piece of history that continues. It's like, as a hobbyist, that card is such a big card to everybody in the hobby, right? Same with the 52 Tops Mantle. There's specific cards that basically stand out, and these are pieces of art that to a lot of collectors in that game, it's art, it's modern, it's art essentially, right? So I don't know if you guys seen the condition of the PSA 1.5. I think it was a new slab too, but man, it got lucky to get a 1.5, to be honest.
I wanted to touch on that too.
There's pretty bad stains at the back too, but I mean, it's still such a crazy card that $3 point whatever million is incredible, to be honest, and it just shows you like long term. I think there's a lot of hope for the hobby in terms of it being considered an actual investment class, right? So
surprised, not surprised at this point. I'm going to piggyback off of what Hyung said. I think when you look at this sale, a lot of people might come out of the gates and be like, you know what, this kind of just proves that the hobby is doing amazing. I'm not going to go that far. Clearly, we're in some tough times right now. We're talking like any investment in general, because real life is happening. But in terms of the Honus Wagner, there are key vintage Wagner 52 Mantle. They're just in a class by themselves. They're like Hyung said, this is now not just a sports card. This is sort of like a, sport category art. Like, it's just in such a different category that if you're the type that has like $10 million is just really means nothing in your pocket, you're sitting on $1 billion and you wanted to invest in something, like, I mean, it makes sense. Like, I would too. I'd probably throw some money at some of this vintage. I'll throw some money at vintage art. I'll throw some money at a Honus Wagner. I think it makes sense because not only I think if the sports card hobby continues, I think in general these uber iconic sports collectibles that are in like the art category, it's it's starting to become untouchable. And I think it's even becoming untouchable amongst buyers in the millions of dollars range, right? It just, because number one, it's just, they don't show up, right? So when they do show up, you are throwing everything at it to get it, right? So, yeah, they're in a class of them by themselves. But with that being said, yeah, I think there's, like Hyung said, there are opportunities to maybe get into some vintage to kind of shore up your portfolio and make one end a little bit safer. Yeah, I think vintage will move slowly. It's when vintage, as people see these news reports of, the 52 mantle and the Honus Wagner, it's obviously giving vintage a bit of a boost. But when that also settles and corrects, I think vintage will move very slow like it's supposed to. But it's safe, right? Because vintage, I don't think maybe vintage will get hit during a bear market as much as modern, which is showing. So it's safe. And then in terms of Young's PSA 1.5, I've always wanted that too, man. Like when I look at PSA or SEC, whatever, I'm just, we're no experts. I'm not a vintage expert. But when I see like a SEC 3 or a PSA 1, and the corners are just like as if I whipped the card out of wall like 10,000 times. There's like a crease in it. The entire back is ripped off and missing, and it gets like a PSA 1. Meanwhile, you have a perfectly good card with maybe a microscopic scratch, and it gets 2 full grades down to a PSA 8. Like it doesn't make sense to me. How is that possible that a card is like bent in half?
That's like a whole new episode. The subjectivity of grading. We could go on and on. I'm sure a lot of people can contribute to that dialogue as well. Right. But that's the world we live in right now, at least until AI takes over. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. That card, I just took another look at it. The condition's pretty brutal. Yeah. But I guess that's what.
It's centered really nice. So
centered nice.
Maybe it's like a 9 centering.
Definitely scarce.
It's holding up all the rest. 9 and 3 zeros.
Yeah. I think the only point I want to make is like even vintage in general is down, right? Because in this bear market, it's hard to sustain things, and at the peak level that it was 2-3 years ago. Right. So I don't want to make it sound like vintage is foolproof. It's definitely down, but of course, it's not as volatile as you guys mentioned already as modern cards. So it is a safer play. And if you want to hold for the long term, vintage is probably the way to go. And you could get some good vintage cards at decent prices now in this bear market, especially the lower pop ones. The ones that are in better condition, making it lower pop. Like I would look at those cards right now, because at the peak, those cards were not attainable in terms of my budget personally. Right. But now there's more choices for me if I want to get into vintage. I'm like, I don't have to settle for a PSA 3. I could go for a 5 or 6 maybe, and I'd be much happier with that. Right. So yeah, that's the one thing I'll say about vintage. And that's T206. Like, I mean, it doesn't surprise me anymore, these record sales. Like, I think we're on an upward trajectory with the Wagner specifically.
I think you'll keep on seeing that too, because I think from an economic perspective, I think people don't understand how much cash is out there. And people right now, like what they're doing in terms of their next moves is they're literally stacking cash and buying any good opportunity in the next 12 to 24 months. So you're going to see these things like these T206 cards that pop up. They're going to sell. They're going to sell for a very healthy price because they could park money there and, it will do just fine, long term, right? So there's so much cash out there, and that's something to note that, even though the market's going down, is people are actually starting to invest in real assets, things that actually make sense. And that's what's gonna happen. And I think we're gonna continue to see these big sales on these kind of like iconic cards, right? Especially the vintage, because it's not like it's the lack of money. It's actually the opposite, and the richer you are, the more you have of it. So, that this is where you're seeing these crazy sales, because to someone like Drake, that thing is a great purchase or a great investment, long term, right? Or anybody who has money for that matter in that game, right? So
yeah, that's a really good point for sure. So we'll see. We'll probably, next time the T206 Wagner goes on sale, we'll talk about it in another episode.
Pull about 3.5 million people's monies together, and then we'll make a purchase.
Let's do it. Then we'll be the headline. All right. I like it. All right. Speaking of headlines, let's move on to our next segment we call Hobby Headlines. So today I thought we could take a look at a recent article published on ESPN.com. And the article is titled New York Yankees prospect Jasson Dominguez stars in a bold new world of sports card prospecting. And so we'll go over this article and specifically go over some of the quotes in that article from a few key players in the hobby. And then we'll discuss whether we agreed or disagreed with what they were saying. And if some of our loyal listeners might remember, we did this in episode 71 when we looked at a pretty in-depth article from The Athletic about the state of the hobby. And I thought our discussion went pretty well then. So this will be kind of like our round 2. All right. So just for a bit of context, the ESPN article is really about investing in prospects, especially on the super high end side of things. But I still think there are some general principles we can still learn from as a card investor in this article. So the first quote is from Shine 150. We all know who he is in the hobby. He's a super high end collector and investor. His real name, I didn't know this. Did you guys know this? That his real name is Matt Allen.
Yeah, I found that out after the article.
Yeah. Right. So
I like Shine
anyway,
better.
Anyway, in the article, he was talking about the Jasson Dominguez 2020 Bowman Chrome Prospect Autograph Superfractor card, which is a 1-of-1 for people who don't know what a superfractor is, that he had bought for $474,000 at the time. And he says this, quote, "Even if you tried to buy the Dominguez from me for $200,000 more than I paid for it, I wouldn't even consider it. Dominguez is not mature yet, like a bond. You just gotta wait." What do you guys think about that quote?
Oh, man. I personally think he overpaid, but I also can't say anything because he's proven over and over again that he's made some big moves that made him a lot of profit, and he's been doing this, and this is the difference between really high-end collectors is they're playing at it in a different game where, he's probably right, and that's the crazy part. Did he overpay? Probably. Is he right? Probably. So like it's kind of like and he even states like his collection is probably north of $100 million. So I mean, this guy's not. I mean, he's not flipping. He didn't buy that Jasson Dominguez for $474,000 to make 40 points off of it. We're talking
right.
He wants multipliers, right? So and Ken Goldin, I think also believes that it's a monster card. I mean, of course it's a gamble, but I mean, if I were him, like what he said, he wouldn't take 200,000. Probably not at that level. It's like right. I probably wouldn't if I bought it for 474,000. So
yeah. Right. It's like if you bought a card for $474,
would
which
you
is
sell
more
for
in our price range.
$674? You're
right,
like, I don't know. By the time there's fees and stuff, it's like,
it's a $20 profit after fees.
Yeah, I think when you, it's all relative, right? Like you're talking about $100 million collection, and you have a tiny little card within that collection. Of course, for $200,000 more, $1,000 more, he wouldn't consider it. It makes sense, But I think in the very generic terms, for me in the prospecting game, I think if you can profit, if it's 20%, after fees, if it's 40%, if it's 2x, even better. If it's 3x, amazing. I think when you can get profits in prospecting, I would probably take it, because you just like, it's really everyone's risk appetite, right? And everybody kind of knows myself and Clark, maybe Clark is flipping a bit, but we're usually the more conservative ones. And if you can take profit, I mean, why not, right? I think if in our space, if we're holding on to like $1,000 card, which would be like kind of our wheelhouse for a bigger card, I mean, to see that card go to $50 potentially, like, I mean, look at all, I was looking at like Robert Posson, I don't know how do you pronounce his last name, but you know, the Oakland Athletics. Poisson or Posson or whatever he is. His cards are so cheap, and those things were like in, you know,
you can't give them away.
You can't give them away, but like I think the Refractor Auto 1010 was going for like $100. I remember that card being like $2-3 grand, right? So I mean, if you were the type, if you had that mindset, and believe me, there are 95%. That case of you losing money than the 5% where you hit gold, right? You hit the next Mike Trout. You're talking a small percentile. So I think if you can take the profits, I probably would. But I mean, I think
good point. Just to prove like that Posson that you're talking about, I pulled an orange auto, a true orange auto, that BGS 95. I sold it for $3,500. So just to give you context, if I held that,
right,
and that's the thing with prospecting, this guy was
thinking
like
he'll be the next prospect,
big
shortstop.
Him and Dominguez, and then it was like Witt, like he was in the mix.
He's still 2 years away or whatever, right? He's not even close.
Honestly, he's not holding his own for sure. So that's the cost of prospecting. It could go to 0 to nothing, or like a lot to nothing really quick, right? Especially these really young stars.
Right.
Yeah. And I think for me, with this quote, is like equating it to a bond isn't exactly the right comparison to me. You know what I mean? Like a bond is, in my opinion, is a little more secure than a Jasson Dominguez Superfractor card, you know, and it might not necessarily mature to the level you want it to, and you know, because it could go down to 0, right?
And I mean, I could see his point in that, like, because I could see like Dominguez. Obviously, for me, it's a risk. Like this guy, but I will say this guy could be a top 10 prospect next year, and then what, right? So it's like it's literally a coin flip, and it's a matter of, do the Yankees believe in him? Like, do you believe in him, and will he perform?
Right.
If he performs, it's the perfect marriage, right? Because you have the ridiculous hypes, the comparisons of Bo Jackson and Mickey Mantle, like, which is ridiculous for an 18-year-old to even fill the shoes of, you know, those comps. But I mean, if these scouts are right, you know, then like I said, Shine would look like a genius. So he looks at it as like, okay, just like a startup company, you know, they obviously not in profit right now. You know, I see the potential of this company, and I'm going to invest in this company because I think it could really boom one day. And I think that's, well, he kind of has to now because he has the Superfractor auto. Right. So it's like you got to be long on that card. So you got to be a big Jasson Dominguez believer for sure.
And
I am.
Yeah, if you have Shine's mindset of long-term hold on the prospecting game, like to wait till it matures, I think your mindset has to be ready and accepting that whatever you bought, whether it's $450,000 or $500, could go to 0, literally go to 0. Like, you have to be completely comfortable with that. And I think then you'll be okay, right? Because it's like on the flip side of people losing money, the gaining side is a story of, I think, who are those guys? Like the Blaz guys, right? I think one of the dudes had the J-Rod red auto and he pulled it and he sold it for 12 grand or something, right?
13 grand, I think.
Yeah. Right. J-Rod, and now that card, what did it sell for? 275,000 or whatever in a short 24 months. So I think that's obviously the upside, where you just hit it huge, and that's what people want to see. They want to see their $10 Mike Trout turn into $100,000, right? So you have to be willing to accept, I'm willing to hold this, but I understand it could go to 0, and I am okay with that, and I think you'll be fine.
But I'll say this, those super success stories they're
very rare. You have to,
we hear about 100%. It a lot because those makes the headlines, but it's very, very rare, right? So actually, it's a good segue to the next quote that I got from Shine in the article. He says, "What seems expensive today seems cheap tomorrow. I'm not even paying attention to the card's day-to-day worth, I'm so long on it that it doesn't even matter. If you said, hey, I'll give you X for the card right now, it's not even an option.
You know what? To me, that sounds like a very confident man in his choices. To be honest, like at the end of the day, he obviously knows what he's doing, and it might sound like crazy and I know that he means that because he had the Wander Franco Superfractor auto that he turned down, I believe, like $2 million, right? Mm-hmm. So like for me, it's like, okay, if he did that with Wander's card, you know, like, and he has Dominguez, and he truly believes that, you know, Dominguez is the future of the Yankees, pretty much. I think he kind of knows what he's doing, and this is the way, you know, successful people think. To be honest, they see like prices not tomorrow. They're not day trading because they're more. And remember, we're used to like $100 cards, $1,000 cards. He's doing this with $1 million cards. Right. So his cycles are obviously way longer than, you know, our, you know, day trading, you know, every week prices, and like he said, right? So I kind of agree with him because that's the way I see the hobby, to be honest. And if I had the money like Shine did, I would probably do something similar and not dabble into kind of like the cheaper stuff, to be honest. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. For me, I think the one thing I will disagree with him on it, and it's probably because I'm not in his league, right, in terms of collecting, but I do agree with, you know, the whole idea that what seems expensive today seems cheap tomorrow, obviously. But I mean, not even paying attention to the card's day-to-day worth, I'm good with that if it's like a grail card of a player that's already established himself. I don't know if I'm good with that with a prospect.
I'm with you there.
Do you know what I mean? Like if I had a Mike Trout Bowman Chrome, I'm not looking at the day-to-day. I know that I'm going to keep that in my safe, in my vault for a long time. But a Jasson Dominguez Superfractor, if I had that, if someone offered me good money, I'd probably take it, to tell you the truth. Because I guess it's
for sure.
I think it's maybe risk averse. You know, like Shine obviously has more money to play around with, so maybe he's a bigger risk taker that way. But even then I would like, I think I would rather reinvest that in a Mike Trout orange refractor Bowman Chrome. You know what I mean? Like something that I feel is a little bit more secure.
I'm with you. I agree with the statement that he said, but I think it relates to veterans and stable, less volatile cards. I don't think I would necessarily put that in the case of prospecting. For me, prospecting, Bowman is interesting because you're just so many years ahead of even when they join the league. So there's multiple opportunities for the card to go to 0 or to go even higher, right? It's really different. But in general, I think once they hit the league, like we said, it's like years 1 to 3. And then after that, you're probably wanting to sell. Like if you think about, I get the thought process of Superfractor 101, Bowman first. If this guy becomes an all-time player, I am holding on to the Grail card, right? You talk about Grail cards like 52 Mantle and whatever, you know, Superfractor Mike Trout. This is the Grail card of potentially a player that could become an all-time Yankee or all-time Major League Baseball player. But I think people romanticize that, like Mike Trout, Tom Brady. We're talking like upper echelon of the collecting hobby, right? Mm-hmm. Think about how much somebody right now would pay for the Superfractor 101, even if it existed. Some kind of super grail of Albert Pujols. How much would that go for? Would it be 10 million? No, it wouldn't. How much would somebody pay for like the Peyton Manning auto rookie 1/1? You know, and Peyton Manning's one of the all-time greatest. Would you say it would sell for 2.5 million? Probably not, right? So I think you're betting on Dominguez being Tom Brady. Like that's within even becoming Peyton Manning, it's a
but that could also,
you know what I'm saying? Like Michael Jordan.
Sure, yeah.
That could also his move could be, you know what, he doesn't have to wait that long because he could wait until Dominguez does good enough where he's the superstar and he hasn't even played a major league game yet. And to me, that's where it's where you sell it. So it's almost like it all depends on kind of like your cycle, because if you're going in it like, okay, Dominguez is going to be the next Mickey Mantle, then you're probably better off, making that investment elsewhere, because the odds of that actually happening and odds of Shine holding that card that long is probably not applicable, right? So I think for him, his thing is he wants to 4 or 5x that thing, where Dominguez is like now the number one prospect in MLB. Now that card price is going out the roof. Now it's a good time to liquidate. I believe the triple logo man is his card as well. Like the one that's on Goldin right now, the 1/1, the Kobe, LeBron, and Jordan, the logo man. Yeah. So that's Shine's card too, right? So his mindset is like, we're talking next level,
for
man.
sure.
Like we're talking, he's flipping on like in a next level, and that's why it's like, I'm just trying to see it in his perspective, and I see it. It makes sense, right? So that's all I'm saying is like his thing is probably he's gonna flip it in the next few years where it's in the millions, and you're right. If you hold it for longer than that, you have the risk of it going to, I wouldn't say zero, unless Dominguez completely Kevin Mosses it, right? So
I mean that's probably odds, but I mean you're right. He's a smart dude. I think what I'm trying to say is like, just be careful of when you're prospecting, really believing that this guy is the next Mantle or Mike Trout. It's 100% he's probably, 99.9% he's not that guy, right? Yeah. So I think obviously Shine's, he's smart. He's probably going to unload this card, kind of like the Wander hype before Wander was going to go into his like full rookie season.
Sold that Wander.
That's exactly like that should have been the time.
Yeah, he definitely should have.
But let's hope he makes the right moves.
Well, speaking of this card potentially being in the millions, Ken Goldin of Goldin Auction says, quote, "It's common that people are prospecting, but the Dominguez case is prospecting, and I know this is a bad word, on steroids. He's a Yankee. Yankee fans and collectors are clamoring for a young draft pick to be their next superstar. If he is, the card's going to be in the millions." So I guess the question really is, do we talk about like, does playing in a big market help the value of the price? I think that's what Goldin's alluding to partially. What do you think of his quote?
I think a part of it is obviously he has to hype it, because if they are right, that's what they expect. At least that's what the way they're going to market it, right? Yeah. So they're just waiting for Dominguez to do his thing, and he's in the Arizona Fall League, so I believe he's getting enough to he reached AA as a 19-year-old this year. Hit 2 home runs in his last season game that ended up clinching Norfolk's title, I believe, and he's just experiencing a lot of stuff at a really young age, and I think the reason why his price is tanked in general and people said he was overrated or overhyped because he had so much hype coming in as a 17-year-old. And of course, it's not sustainable for a 17-year-old to do magical things, when you're still figuring out your body and, you're still in semi-puberty, right? So it's like this guy still has a lot more room to fill out and grow. So, I think Ken Goldin has to hype it up. Because of his nature of his business, and he's probably the one selling it because that's what they probably do. And but I don't see it not happening, to be honest. If Dominguez becomes a top 10 prospect, for sure I could see it going crazy.
Yeah, I generally take a lot of Ken Goldin's quotes with a grain of salt. Like he kind of, it's kind of like sports card prosperity, like, and I don't mean that in a shade, like I'm not saying he's shady. He's got a business to run, and this guy is marketing. I think the more he markets the sports card industry, it's going to completely help his business. So most of his quotes are going to be, boosting the industry, boosting certain cards, boosting certain topics. When you look at a lot of his comments, it's almost always boosting, right? So that's why you just take it with a grain of salt. It's nothing shady. It's just he's got to do what he's got to do, man. He's running a successful business. He's making a ton of money. So I think when people read Ken Goldin's quotes, just take that stuff with a grain of salt. But I mean, he's like, card's gonna be in the millions, maybe. But he's not wrong about the Yankee stuff. I mean, that's we've known that, right? Like the Yankee market is it's big, and if somebody explodes in the Yankee market, Aaron Judge, you know, it could be, it's on a level that maybe other markets don't see, and it impacts the sports card community in a different way, right? So the Yankee portion is not wrong for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well, especially not just being in a big market, but the history behind the Yankees organization that adds value, in my opinion, to the card itself, you know? Like, you know, we joke that Aaron Judge's 62, like, doesn't really break a record, you know, an MLB record, but because he did it in New York with the Yankees, like, there's this comparison with Roger Maris, another historical baseball card or baseball player, and you know, with his card, and Mickey Mantle, like, and Babe Ruth breaking his record, like, he's being compared to those guys because they all played for the same team, and that just adds to the narrative of like his accomplishment, you know, this year. So, you know, do I think Aaron Judge, if he hit 62 home runs for the Toronto Blue Jays, would that, you know, impact his value? Like, it would have gone up, but I don't think it would have gone up as high as it has him playing for the Yankees. So I think that's just a reality of baseball card collecting. If you're a Yankees fan, or if they're a Yankees player, then yeah, you just have a lot more fans to sell to. All right, so here's another quote from Ken Goldin, and you know, just with what John said about taking things with a grain of salt, I wonder if this applies as well. He says, cards were never considered an alternate asset class until the last 5 years. People are looking at cards kind of like the next big biotech company. So do you think that's hyperbole, or do you think that's true?
I think a bit of both. And it goes back to kind of like my last point, but I also believe that it is considered an alternative asset class because like the amount of, you know, cash honestly is valueless. And a lot of these people that come into this area of space, you know, they're looking for long term in terms of an actual asset class, right? So, yeah, I think that's going to be huge with technology because it's going to just give more options to be able to invest than even though you might not physically have it. I know it's still young, and I've been saying this like earlier that, you know, stuff like technology is going to come to play where it's going to totally change the investment game of these alternative asset, and even technology from the crypto side will eventually play into effect. So, yeah, I agree with him in terms of it being an alternate asset class. I think if you look at, like, I was just thinking of this. Let's just say, you know, I build a real estate empire and, you know, I'm doing well in life and, you know, I have a lot of investments, you know, sporadically poured out into businesses, real estate, whatever it is, right? I would totally go into really, really high end cards because for me, it's like, it's just such a new market. And with the rarity of some of these cards and proven markets, sales in the last 5 years, like Ken was saying, it's like, this is legit stuff in my opinion. Like, I think it's a good way, especially with the value of what money actually is. It's worthless. So it's like some of these big time players in the game, they have so much money that they're able to invest it in these cards, and that only helps the whole market as a whole, right? And especially with guys like Shine, who like are friends with Drake, for instance, bringing Drake into the hobby, ripping with hobby, you know, with Logan Paul, with all these guys that, you know, are celebrities or at least influencers. And I know like a lot of hobbyists hate those influencers who basically come into this hobby and kind of give their 2 cents, right? They have a bad I guess rep, but at the end of the day, these are the record sales that we're seeing, right? And for me, if you want to look at it just straight from a hobby perspective, where we just go in the basement and just, you know, just share our cards and it just trade nights every night, and there's no market, I don't think we would all be in this space today, right? There's that investing portion that we're all in it for, hoping that, you know, it is an alternate investment class, because I think that's kind of important for why we're in this space as well. We're just not 100% complete hobbyists, right? And I think part of the lure of coming back to the hobby was, we have to justify why we spend so much time in the hobby, and part of that is hopefully profit as an investment, right? So
agreed.
Yeah. Again, for me, kind of grain of salt for sure. I mean, alternate asset class, I think we were certainly believers of that, especially when the market was like blossoming the way it did the last 24 months. Now with the bear market, it's obviously correcting back towards collectors and sports fans and whatnot, and some of the people are leaving. I probably fall somewhere in between of being collectors and somewhat an asset class. I think I'll agree there. Next big biotech company, I think that's just marketing fluff trying to really big up the industry. That's probably what it is, because it's I don't think I believe in that. But sports cards, I don't think, if people ever feared it's going to go away, it's not. We're talking sports. Like, sports has been around, for a century or more. Being a fan or idolizing sports heroes and athletes, that's been big. And I think what sports cards has, maybe even over memorabilia space, is that number one, you have the aspect of like memorabilia, you own a little piece of your favorite sports hero, right? It's not really actually a piece of him, but you feel like it is. And then number two, it goes back to sort of the kid in you and the organics of collecting. Right? Like whether you collected rare looking rocks or bottle caps that now turn into, see people collect silver coins or silver spoons or sports cards. So you got the collecting world, there's that chase factor. And then you have kind of like owning a piece of one of your sports heroes. So I think this concept, obviously cards and stuff, it's not going to go away. So I think it'll fall between somewhere of sports card collecting. And there have been so many big eyes on it that I think I'll believe the first section of becoming an asset class. It seems like we're already almost there. So,
yeah, I think in regards to being an alternate asset class, I treat sports cards almost like how people collect fine art. Right. Like, I think that's a better comparison than a biotech company, in my opinion. And I think, I kind of get like you said, John. He's really boosting the card industry, which is fine. We like a good boost, in the hobby, right? But I treat it more like a fine art, kind of more like fine art. And, people invest in fine art still. Like, that's not going away. And I know there will be people that say, well, there was a junk wax era in the 80s and 90s. And, that pretty much went to zero, right? What's to prevent it from happening again? But back then, it was really only like few players at the top. And now we have something called the internet. Now we have something, we have more technology, more innovation is, coming into the space. And I think that, that really levels the playing field a lot for people that just want to, make money in this hobby. It's possible to do that. And we're seeing it, right? We're seeing collectible. We're seeing different players come into the game, whether it's through grading or whether it's through, other products and services. Like, this is an industry that's growing. We're all in a bear market, but everyone else is in a bear market. Every other industry is in a bear market as well. So I think this is much different than the junk wax era, and it's not even comparable, right? So as long as it doesn't go to zero, we're not seeing that. We're seeing it's going down like everything else, but it's maintaining like a base level, and everyone seems to have, or a lot of people that are still in it seem to have optimism that things will eventually be, go back up when everything else in the economy goes back up. So we're just kind of enjoying mostly as collectors now, because as investors we're not making that much money. But I think that's
the best way to look at it, though. I think because if you think about it too, it's like a lot of the people I see is like they always say, and we've preached that in our previous episodes of collect what you love and you can never go wrong. And, I think a lot of people have found success in doing that. Right. Because then the market will dictate whether it's worth selling or not. You don't have to force to say you're giving yourself a timeline to sell this, hoping that, market conditions will make you sell it. Like you should collect what you love, and then the market will tell you when you should sell, because the opportunity will come to you, right? And you keep on collecting, right? Happy collecting, right? And that's the way I think a lot of people are winning now. I guess they're switching their approach from that whole flipping game and kind of seeing it more of a long-term play where, you know, they could make sounder investments, right? So
yeah, for sure. I like that. All right, last quote that I got from the article is from Jesse Craig. He's director of business development for PWCC Marketplace. And he says, modern cards are more naturally volatile. There's risk when a player's active. I'm a risk-averse guy, so if I were investing $500,000 into a card, I'm going vintage. And we kind of talked about this off the top of the show with Honus Wagner, but do you share that same sentiment? If you had a lot of money, you'd rather invest it in vintage?
I would, yeah. I think that's the safer play in terms of building a portfolio. Like, everybody's different. It's like, what if you have $100 million portfolio? Then the modern flip might be more attractive, you know, like a Jasson Dominguez, because you're trying to 5x that, whereas the vintage is more of a kind of long-term play, right? So it all depends on where your mindset is at, and some people are really, really, really rich that like this, like we do. We sometimes like day trading because of the flip, because there might be a good opportunity to make, you know, a quick flip, and these guys are just doing it at extra zeros, like a few extra zeros on it, right? So it's like, but someone who like us, who would never drop like $500,000 on a card right now, we would say if we did have that money, we would go into vintage, only because we don't have the $100 million of other liquidity assets that we could justify it.
Exactly.
So it's all depends on your perspective, right? If I know some people with that kind of money, so it's like they would be like, yeah, let's go volatility, right? And I was sort of that way too on the cheaper stuff, right? I like the volatility on the cheaper stuff, so.
Yeah. Obviously, I agree, because if I had that money, I'm probably going vintage with it as well. But if it's a bit of a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek stab at Shine, I think, for a guy like Shine, at the same time, it's because he also mentions how he turns in the article, he turned some of his profits from his other businesses into his passion. Like he redirected into his passion. So by saying passion, he's into collecting. Like he loves doing this. And if you're into collecting, we always say collect what you love. And if collect what you love is only modern players, then so be it. And that's your play, right? So that's why he loves the Luka logo man, and he loves the, Wander Franco Superfractors. That's what he enjoys staring at, right? Like as much as you might think the 52 mantle is by far the better investment and it's going to make me the most money, Shine might be like, I don't like looking at old cards. They don't do anything for me. I like looking at Luka logo man. I'm going to go for that, right? So, I mean, it's a mix of everything. I think if you're how much risk you're willing to take, what cards you're enjoying, what do you collect, it's all of that mixed in. I know it's such a wide range of such a wide answer, but I think you have to mix everything in to play. And you have to enjoy your card. You don't just buy things because somebody tells you. Even if we tell you, go out and get vintage because it's going to secure your portfolio, and that's a smart move to do. If you don't enjoy vintage, don't do it.
Yeah, for sure. I think if I had $500,000, is that what he says? If I had $500,000, I think I would go half. Maybe a quarter vintage.
Yeah, if I'm being really honest with myself, probably like 100,000 into vintage, and then 400,000 to play
all modern all the way, man. Hyung, I can't believe you're the guy's volatility. That's where the excitement's
like the volatility. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know we could break it up and use $100,000 to rip. If that was the case, then we're ripping NTs all day.
That's so true.
We're going all in.
True. Oh, you know what? I'm reading the quote again. It says into a card, so I guess you had to choose one card.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. It's Luka logo man.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty still risk averse in a lot of ways. So yeah, I'll go vintage as well. But like a Jackie Robinson, one of my grail cards.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I could break it up, yeah, definitely take a few risky plays. All right, great discussion, guys. We'll put a link for the article below in our show notes. If anyone of our listeners wants to read the whole thing, we'll have it for you there. All right, let's go ahead to our next segment. We're calling Target Price. So this is a new segment that we were discussing off air because we couldn't believe how far some of these iconic cards have fallen in value during this bear market. So I thought I'll throw out a dollar amount for a specific GOAT type card or iconic card, and you tell me if you think we'll hit that target price within a year. That's our timeline. And if it does, would you buy it at that target price? Okay? So I have 5 cards that I looked up. And actually, I'm going to start with the Mike Trout Topps Update PSA 10. Hyung, that's the one you were talking about. It's kind of recently sold for a low, all-time low, I believe, or within the last 2 years at least.
1536.
1536, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So target price 1,000. Do you think it'll hit that target price within a year?
Going into the off season, and because there's a pop of 5,000 plus, I think there's going to be a lot of people unloading before November, December. So I don't personally think it'll go under 1,000, but I think it can, just because of the whole scare with Mike Trout, with everybody, and with the high pop count. I think the market correction should be around 1,000 to 1,500. So, I mean, I think I just looked at the data and it said 1,450 was the low price. So we've kind of hit a resistance at that 1,450, 1,500 marker, but it is on a downward trend from the last 3 months. And it was up above 2,000. So it's been, for the last 3 months, it's been a slowly like 25% decline month to month. For the last 3 months. I still think it's going to keep on going, especially with the bear market, with the pop count, and where the economy is going. I think people are going to there's going to be more sellers than buyers, right? And usually that's the case, what tanks the price. And there's going to be a point where, people pick it up, right? They have target prices of like 1,000 for me. I'm waiting till 1,000. If not, I'm going to just pass on it because I don't think it's worth $1,000 where I could make enough money, in the future or put it part of my PC.
Okay. John?
I could certainly see it correcting even further to the target price of 1,000. I could see it. I think the market, people will say all time, like they'll make a list. I think I've seen it recently. You make a list, all-time iconic cards, must-have in your collection, Ken Griffey 89, and the Mike Trout is probably somewhere there for baseball. And it's a correct statement. It's an all-time iconic card, but I think the market is clearly shifting, right? Like people are, as much as something is iconic, people are kind of shifting away from base paper, and they want something more special. So I maybe somebody does want to collect Mike Trout. They want to take advantage, but they're going to want to go for Bowman Auto, the Bowman First Auto, right. Or they're going to want to go for a Mike Trout game used autograph, PSA 10, autograph 10. Something that's a bit more rare, that's a little bit out there. That's what people want. They don't want to go for a PSA 10 Pop 5,000 paper base, right? So I think the market is shifting. And can we still call it all-time iconic? Yeah, you can. But that doesn't mean that it necessarily will be in everybody's collection, right? I think even the three of us here, I don't think that any of us are going to be chasing the Mike Trout update, even if it was at $975. I don't even know if the three of us would buy it as much as it is.
I would buy it.
Okay, maybe.
I think I would buy it at $975.
Well,
$935.
I like the card. PSA 10s are so clean, right? Yeah, so I just throw it out there. Yeah. Under 1,000, I think.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I think with the market moving even to let's say something like a refractor, if it was same price, same, are you going update paper or are you going like Bowman refractor, like
Bowman Chrome
refractor? You know what I'm saying? I think if I obviously have thousands to play with, you'll throw in a Mike Trout update. Sure, throw it in there, But if you're only going to get one Mike Trout for $1,000 or $1,100, I think the market is shifting to like, I'm going to look for the Bowman Chrome Refractor. Like that's a cooler card to have, right? So yeah, I could see it going down because of those reasons.
Okay, so both of you could see it hitting 1,000 or less, but if it does go under 1,000, Hyung's buying, but John's not.
I'll probably look to like
going to
Bowman
side with
Chrome
John
Refractor or something. That's me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to go with John too. I'm not buying. I think it'll definitely hit 1,000, especially with the pop count of 5,000 plus. I didn't know it was that high actually. So, yeah, I'm not going to belabor the point here, but I think it definitely will sometime in the off season. This particular card, although it's very well known and iconic, like you said, John. I'm going to skip to I had another one, but I'm going to skip to the LeBron James Topps Chrome Rookie PSA 10 because you talked about the base iconic cards. It's kind of the same boat. I lowered the threshold here. Target price of 6,000. Last sold for 7,700.
Let me see this time.
And we talked about, and the podcast 2,200 if you're looking that up, but we talked about this, like, is it going to go under 10K? No, I can't go under 10K. And now we are in the bear market. Last sold 7,700. Do you think it'll go down to 6K even within a year?
Ooh. I honestly don't think it. 6K, I think it
What's
can.
What's the pop count? 3,300 or something like that?
It's 2200.
2,200.
Yeah.
The reason why I say like back in July, and this is off-season basketball, it did go under $6,000. The low price was 57.
Right.
So I mean, we're getting into basketball season. Obviously, it's dependent on what LeBron does this year. Is going to really determine whether you break that resistance or not, because I think maybe in the summer, next summer, it could go below that, again, depending on what LeBron does, but I don't see it in the next, I'd say 6 months going under $6,000. No.
Okay. Yeah.
And yet, I might be a buyer at 6,000. I remember I passed that card off at like 1,500, and then again at 2,500, and then again at 3,500, and then I have. It's one of those things where you can't pull the trigger at 6. After passing it all those opportunities.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think I'm gonna say target 6. I could see it. What's the? Do you guys know what the Kobe is at? Topps Chrome. I feel like the LeBron will always.
It's a little more.
I feel like they'll kind of mirror each other, give or take.
I think
I imagine the Kobe's a bit more, but
8,200 was the last Kobe PSA 10, but that's a pop count of 833.
Right, it's less, and the price will fluctuate based on the hulking, right? So that's a little different.
Right, exactly.
I could see, I don't want to delay the point. I could see it going to 6,000. It's got a fairly decent pop. It's base, and like I said, I think the way the market is moving, I think there's going to be a lot of. They're going to want LeBron, but they might go for Topps Pristine Refractor. They might go for something else before they go for the all-time the Topps Chrome base. So I could see it.
Yeah, I think so too. Even if I lowered it to 5K, maybe not in season, but off season again. Depending on how LeBron does, I could see it go down to 5K because it is base, and I agree. I would rather have something else. If I'm
spending that much,
I would rather spend 5,000 on something else. Yeah, on another LeBron card. All right, let's go to the one I had second initially, the Juan Soto Bowman Chrome base rookie auto card. I got the BGS 9.510, and I mentioned it before. It recently sold for under 1,900, I think, in a PWCC auction. I'm going to give it a target price of 1,500.
I think it could hit that. And I think it's a buy. If I remember buying that card pre-COVID, like we were paying like $650, $700 raw for it, which was insane. Like it was pretty expensive at the time. But then Soto has done so much since. Like so much. Like he won a World Series, he won a batting title, he won, all these accolades during that time, and it's back to where the price was from before. So for me, if I take out those 3 years of correction and do a healthy kind of like graph of year to year sales on this particular Bowman, I would say it's pretty at the bottom in terms of pricing. So I'm gonna say I'm picking it up at 1,500 if it goes lower, especially a gem Bowman Chrome Auto.
Okay.
I could see it going to 1,500. I think 1,500 is a nice round number that will probably see a lot of support, especially for Juan Soto. I personally not, but it's just the bias. I'm not a big fan of the picture. I'm not particularly super interested in Bowman first autograph base for some reason. It doesn't do it for me. So from a bias standpoint, I probably won't pick it up. But in terms of like investment at 1,500, I would see a lot of support. I think it can go there. Unless Padres win the World Series, then forget I ever said that.
All contingent on how the Padres do it this postseason, right? I don't know, because I don't know. I'm saying this because I wanted to hit 1,500. So I don't think it's going to hit 1,500. I think it's going to be like, I'm just going to wait a little bit lower, and it's going to stop at 1,700, and it's going to shoot back up. But like, I think with that said, for me, it's an automatic buy at 1,500. I'm like very tempted at that level. So yeah, I'm hoping it does, but knowing my luck, I think it'll stay above 1,500. I think there's enough Juan Soto fans out there that'll keep it above 1,500. So we'll see if I'm right. Okay, 2 more. Luka Doncic Panini Prizm Silver, PSA 10. Target price of 1,500. Last sold for about 2,100.
1,500 seems like a really good deal, Clark.
I bought it for 23, so yeah, 1,500 is a great deal.
I think I like that price for Luka, especially I know the silver has a higher pop count, probably over 2,000 or so, but I think 1,500 is pretty cheap for a guy with Luka type talent, especially when you're comparing it to other superstars in other sports that what their silvers kind of sell for, right? So I think 1,500 is a great buy, to be honest. I like the card. Obviously, Prizm for me is still king, and having silver PSA 10 was always one of our kind of like, we got to get our hands on one of those. It was Mahomes, a Mahomes silver or optic hollow, Luka Prizm silver or optic hollow, one of the two that we're always saying that we're gonna chase. So I like the price at 1,500, to be honest, and I don't mind it even going down more, obviously, and I would even consider picking up multiples at that, like even if it goes lower than 1,500. I'd keep on DCAing, until it pops back up above 15.
Yeah.
Nice.
Silvers are the gold standard in ultra modern, and Luka in basketball is also the gold standard in ultra modern. So I think you marry the two, I think you're going to see tons of support. I'm going to flip the other way. I'm going to say Luka's going to have a big year. And I'm going to say it's not going to go to 1,500. I could see it getting close. Like, I think when it starts to creep into like, if it gets under 17, 1650, 1625, I think it's such a great, like, when you're talking liquidity, like this is probably the card that you picture when dealers and collectors want something. Number one, they want it for their collection. Number two, they're willing to like peddle it in terms of like the volatility and also the liquidity. So I think this is the gold standard. I think if it goes to like 1,600-ish, it's going to have tons of support. So I'm going to say, I'm going to stop it. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to say we're not going to see 1,500.
Yeah, you know what? I've been closely monitoring this card because I have a self-interest in it. But over the summer, it's kind of fluctuated. Like, on Card Ladder, I put my main collection in there. And then every time, I see on a day-to-day basis. Like it'll say, oh, my collection value went up plus 300. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And the next day is minus 400. And then, it's like
Luka silver.
It's always the Luka silver. That's the reason why it's just going up and down. And I think there's good resistance over the last few months at 1750. I think that's where I'm like, oh shit, once it hits Sunday, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going down. And then the next time it's like, oh, there's a $2,100 sale. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like it's ranging right now in that area. So I'm with you, John. I don't think it's going to hit 1,500. I certainly hope not. But I think if it does, I'm with you too, Hyung. Like that's a good price.
I think we're all buying if it goes 1,500.
I'll get my second Luka at that point for sure. Okay. And last one, we always talk about this. Patrick Mahomes, his optic hollow PSA 10. I remember us saying, at $3K, such a good buy. I'm going to say the target price, half of that, $1,500.
Holy cow. What is it out right now?
Last sold 2,000, just over 2,000 last sold.
What was the low?
Yeah.
I'm sure before the season started,
the low
it was a bit lower.
1350. That was back in off season July. Yeah. So I don't think the way the Chiefs are playing,
I don't see.
I don't think it's gonna get back to that point. And because of the low pop count, we all love this card. The Optic Hollow is probably one of the best looking rookie cards for both basketball and football. So I think this is probably one of Pat Mahomes' best rookie cards as well. It has low pop, 665. I think if it does hit 1,500, I think I'm a buy for sure. Just because it was always on the wish list, and now that it's flirting at that line, obviously if Mahomes goes deep into the playoffs, you're going to see a little bump. If he doesn't, you're probably going to maybe see it in the offseason next year. But that's the difference is I think his card is more protected than let's just say the Luka Prizm Silver, just because of the pop count, right? So guys like me, I would literally hold that card if it did, go lower. I wouldn't paper hand it and just get out of Mahomes unless something absolutely terrible happened, right? So yeah, I'm a buy at 1,500. Whether it gets to that point, I doubt it, but it's all dependent on, hit the next, I guess, 3-4 months to see.
Mahomes continues to prove everybody that every year is not a fluke. He's elite. This year, people are saying, oh, he's missing a bunch of weapons. He's not going to be as good. It's quite the opposite. Obviously, Chiefs are having a lot of success. He's having a lot of success. I don't see it going to 1,500. I really hope it goes to 1,500, but I don't see it. I think you're going to see very similar to the Luka Prizm Silver. I think at the 1,650, 1,750 mark, you're going to see tons of support. And even by the end of the year, maybe at the 2,000 mark, you might see tons of support. So 1,500 is low. I wish it goes to that amount, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I'm not going to say much on this. It's kind of the same reason I think it's not going to hit 1,500, what I said about Juan Soto. I want it to hit 1,500, so it's not going to hit 1,500. It's just going to maintain the current levels. And I think you'll start to see an uptick if Mahomes continues to play the way he has been the last few weeks. All right, that's our new segment, Target Price. We'll do it again. I'll look for another new list of 5 cards that are just trending downwards currently. And, some of these cards might be really good buying opportunities in the near future. All right, with that, let's go on to our last segment, our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. And this is when the three of us, we choose 2 cards or 2 sets or 2 players, and we debate which one we would rather invest in. So Hyung, do you want to start things off?
Sure. Let's talk about Mike Trout here. We all believe that he's a buy in the offseason. And recently, his 2009 Bowman Chrome Refractor Auto BGS 9.5 sold for 10.4K. So $10,500, which is 54% in the last 3 months in terms of a drop. Right? So we're talking the grail that everybody wants, the type of card, the Bowman Chrome 2009 Trout for 10.5K, which with a 55% like a negative growth in the last 3 months versus a 2003 Topps Chrome LeBron Refractor PSA 9, which last sold for $13.5K, right? And in the last 3 months, there's been about a 7% steady increase in that card leading up to basketball season. So you buying into the LeBron Refractor that you guys all want, or are you gonna go with the Trout Refractor? I think we did something similar earlier, but it's gonna be different answers based off of where you are with Trout now and his prices.
Yeah.
John, you go first because you're a LeBron hater, so it might be an easier choice for you.
I'm going LeBron, man. As much as
okay.
LeBron. The Trout, I think they're as cheap as that card is, and that's obviously the grail for people that believe in Trout. So somebody like Clark, he's going to really want to target that price at some point. But there's a lot of people that might be off Trout, and that's a lot. It's been happening, right? So Trout is going to, I think you're going to have to roll the dice a bit to hope that Trout either has an 80 to 90% season healthy next year. Like you like that has to happen, right? So there's stuff that really has to happen for Trout. LeBron, it's safe, right? And I think we just talked about the Topps Chrome rookie card PSA 10, about that dropping in price. Guess what? Whoever wanted that Topps Chrome and has been just like, I have to go for this card, but the market is shifting towards something like Refractor. I really think some of that money from whoever is chasing that Topps Chrome card, that money is going to go towards Refractor money. So I think as we move forward, LeBron is always going to be collectible. He's amongst the greatest of all time. And it's the all-time Topps Chrome card, but it's the Refractor, right? And you obviously can't afford the PSA 10. So what's next best? PSA 9. At those prices, even if it's $13,000 versus $8,000 for the PSA 10 Topps Chrome base, me personally, I'm going for a Refractor PSA 9, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree with that. So I think that card is, number one, it's safer, and number two, I think it has just as much legs to go up as the Trout. So it's an easy one for me, LeBron.
All right. You know what? I'm going with the LeBron too.
Interesting.
There we go. Personally, as a collector, I want that Bowman Chrome Trout Refractor Auto. Like, that's a grail card for me. I'm a baseball card collector first, more than any other sport. But as an investor, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to let go of that LeBron, the Refractor PSA 9 for $13K, because as much as I don't like PSA 9s, the only time I do like, or I at least don't mind the PSA 9 is if the PSA 10 is out of reach for most people, which it is for the LeBron James Chrome Refractor. It's like way more than, I think it's $50K plus, right? So the PSA 9 is a good alternative for even other higher end collectors. And so therefore there is a little bit more liquidity there. And if it goes up, then you have like the even higher end collectors in the market for PSA 9s if it goes up. So I think as an investment, and everything that John mentioned, LeBron James as a player, what he's accomplished in basketball, is a safer bet. So yeah, I'm thinking this more as an investor. I'm going with the LeBron Refractor PSA 9. But as a collector, I want that Trout in my collection.
Interesting. I'm actually going with the Trout. I just think that, I don't remember the last time
it's a good deal.
That price was even hit. Like, I remember the 10.4K pricing on the base, and the Refractor, this had to have slipped like really bad. I don't think we're gonna see it lower than this, to be honest. So at $10,500, I'm in with the Refractor, especially that it's a gem mint from BGS. And obviously, LeBron Refractor is a grail card, so obviously you can't go wrong with both. I think that LeBron card is just going to be steady, just because the pop count's so low and it's such a desired card of LeBron. But like, rarely would you get to see a Refractor auto of a Mike Trout Bowman Chrome. And I was just looking, he hit 40 home runs, as we know, this season, in ridiculous amounts of games. I think it was 112 119 games. He hit 40 home runs, and he's at 350 for his career. So I'm just thinking, if Mike Trout squeezes out a good solid 4 years, he might hit, 500 before he's 35, which is pretty stupid, right? And I think Albert Pujols was on that pace had he not, gone to the Angels. Like, I think that's the curse. But yeah, I mean, Pujols was right there, but then he ended up squeezing out, whatever he had left in his latter 10 years, right? And we talked about that. So I'm going to say Trout regardless, just because I think he's going to accomplish a lot of things in the next few years that are going to really kind of push the limits of how good he actually is, hoping that he stays healthy, right? So I think he could do it in 3-4 years where he could actually make history with hitting over 500 home runs. So
now there's one aspect of Mike Trout that people don't talk about, and maybe it's completely out of whack. Mike Trout getting traded. They talk about Ohtani getting traded and maybe he'll sign elsewhere or whatever. And let's say Angels in the next 1 or 2 years is in they finally decide Mike Trout, he's a broken body. We need to completely reconstruct this team. Man, can you imagine? Because Mike Trout, his biggest knock is not winning. And let's say he goes to the Dodgers or something like that. I could see his card instantly,
Dodgers,
just instantly exploding. So that's an aspect of Mike Trout cards I think people haven't really thought about, because it's just so out there and seems improbable. But who knows, man? I think something like that could happen.
Yeah, good point. All right, Johnny.
All right. So in honor of the topic of prospecting and Yankees, we're going to go Jasson Dominguez versus Anthony Volpe, two of the biggest hyped New York Yankee prospects. And I'm just saying, who would you rather choose? But if you wanted some context in terms of cards, I think that Dominguez, you could have had his refractor auto PSA 10 auto 10 last month for under $1,000. But ever since that ESPN article, there have been 2 sales over $2,000. And I don't know if it's a little bit of a pumpy dumpy situation. But let's say for all intents purposes, it's around $1,750, and a Volpe Bowman First Auto Refractor 10 also sits at around $1,750. So about the same.
I'll go first because I think it's easy for me. I'm going for upside at this point, and I think Jasson Dominguez still has the bigger upside. I like Volpe as a prospect too. Right, I think he'll definitely be up sooner than Dominguez, but if it's similar, if the cost is already similar, then I'd rather just go upside and go with Dominguez.
Nice, yeah. I think I'm on the same page there, Clark. Just because it's you go into Volpe's nice, but I don't know if he's gonna be a superstar. It's you go into Baskin Robbins. And you just get a plain vanilla cone. And you're just that's Anthony Volpe. So you obviously want some flavor. You want something a little more than just vanilla. That's Jasson Dominguez. And for me, it's that's what you're going in there for, because the hype's there. It's the perfect marriage. And there's a lot more risk involved, right? I think Anthony Volpe is close. He has his ETA of making it to the majors is probably next season, realistically. He had an okay season. He showed his power numbers. He could run, and I think his ceiling isn't that high, though. I think he's going to be a good player, maybe similar to Bobby Witt Jr., to be honest. But I just feel like Dominguez has such a high ceiling, and with the hype, that if it does pan out, I like my chances on Dominguez, especially from an investment standpoint. I checked the prices. I think a base PSA 10 floating at 800, so refractor at 1750 makes sense. And to me, it's I remember when the Dominguez chase and the Bobby Witt chase was crazy, and everybody didn't even know Volpe. So Volpe's prices are still crazy, but he is the number 1 prospect in the Yankees organization. So he's a safe bet for me. I think he'll have a good major league career. I just don't think that he's going to hit enough in terms of his average. I think he'll run well. I'm just a little worried about, his batting average and the type of player he buys into. It's very similar to Bobby Witt, actually. So I think they're both going to be good players. It's just I just not prefer vanilla ice cream this time.
Right.
I'm going to disagree with Hyung in one thing. I think Volpe is more like chocolate chip. He's more than vanilla. Okay, give him chocolate chip.
I called Bobby Witt vanilla too. He's just get the job done.
Some respect on
solid.
His name.
Hey, vanilla ice cream's still good.
It is.
Vanilla ice cream's
underrated.
still great.
I do like vanilla.
Yeah.
Underrated.
It's just good.
Yeah. Correct me if
it can't be overrated or underrated.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Jasson Dominguez has he could be a home run hitter, right? He has home run ability.
Oh yeah, he had 16 bombs.
He didn't.
He hit 16 bombs this year.
Right. But Volpe seems just as powerful. But based on I'm not a prospector, but based on the conversations Hyung and I have had over the last 12 to 24 months. To me, Volpe sounds like the for sure MLBer. Like he is going to be in the league, in the show, probably at minimum a very solid player, if not some ceiling to be like an all-star player. Dominguez, I don't know if he had a decent season, right? So I think that's turning around a lot of people's expectation. But it wasn't looking good at one point. It looked like some people were like, "Oh, I don't even know if he's going to make the league," right? So I think there's a bit of that in him where he may not become anything, but I'm going to have to go with what I said before. And I'm a bit of a coin flip here, but I'm going to give the edge to the home run power potential. I think if any of these prospects have an opportunity to be a part of the home run race, that is the risk to go for the upside. So kind of like Clark saying, kind of going for the upside. I mean, both of you guys are saying that. Mm-hmm. For the reason of home run hitting ability, I'm also going to go with Dominguez. It's going to be a sweep.
Nice. Good one. All right, we'll end off with my pick one. On one side, you got Luka Doncic, the 2018 Prizm Rookie Sensations autograph card, PSA 10. Last sold for $3.4K. And FYI, it is a sticker auto. This is why I wanted to put in there. Versus the Luka Doncic 2018 Optic Orange, which is numbered to 199. PSA 10, which sold for $3K. So just a few $100 less.
This was a tough one. This threw a wrinkle on my brain a bit because normally I would have picked the orange optic for the right reasons of, low pop. You got low pop, you got numbered, you got colored optic, which we all love, and it's Luka. And the whole deal with Luka's autos and the story of mom signing, I don't know what to believe, but apparently he signed it. So they squashed that. But something about me thinks that the Prizm rookie signatures is so underrated in my opinion. Like I just feel like it gets no love, even though it's a sticker auto. It's still your Prizm auto of the guy, right? So it's still low pop. I'm leaning more towards the auto at this point. Last year it would have been the orange for sure for me, but for some reason I like the auto. I like the image. It doesn't matter if it's sticker at this point because you can't really change that. But yeah, I'm gonna go with the Prizm auto. I can't believe I'm saying that. Yeah, I think yes. Long term it's people are gonna realize, you know what, autos are better. I like autos. Right. And I'm starting to realize that too. I was anti-auto because I didn't believe that a price should command that much for a certified auto versus like an in-person auto, for instance. Right.
Right.
To each their own.
Man, I feel like Clark, you picked this just for me. I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys, but there was a time where I was close to pulling the trigger on an optic orange Luka. Because previously they were selling for a lot, like versus the hollow. And then at some point recently, the hollow and the optic the hollow and the orange start to get kind of close in price. And I think I wanted a big Luka card. I've always kind of been chasing the select blue, but the optic orange has always been up there for me. I love orange refractors. I love I love the Luka optic. I think the holo is the card for me. But what pulled me away was there's something about the Luka orange. It just doesn't match well. It's weird. Like, I love orange. I love optic. I love the image. But I don't know what it is about. Maybe it's the Dallas jersey with the orange. And I'm sure if I saw it in person, I'd be like, oh yeah, I want that card right now. But in images, it's like, you know. And then now you're putting that up against the sticker auto, which also I'm like, Yeah. So it's like, this is a good one for me. I think I'm still going to go with the orange because that's how much I despise sticker autos. I just don't. If I'm spending $3,000 on Luka, this is my wheelhouse to buy a big Luka card, you know, put it away in a safe, and this is going to be my one big Luka card. That's kind of my price range, actually. And if I'm going to do that, I am not picking a sticker auto. So for that reason, I automatically am going to the optic orange.
That's interesting. Okay. So I'm the tiebreaker. I like to know orange and blue are complementary colors, eh?
They are complementary colors. But I will say, John, you made a good point because I feel the same way. I am not a fan of optic orange. For some reason, it's optic orange that I'm not a fan of. I had a Jason Tatum as well. Like I like for some reason the orange refractors on Topps Chrome totally different. Right, for me, like totally different.
Maybe it's just because it's the orange border makes it it throws it off, or
I don't know. And it's just the 199. I'm sure if it was
25?
numbered to 25, I would like it a lot more. And the 199 really throws it off. Yeah. So maybe that's it. But go on, Clark. What are you saying?
That's hilarious. I chose this because I think the autograph rookie cards for basketball are super underrated. So I'm glad Hyung has finally joined the dark side and come into the club where we recognize that basketball autograph card rookie cards are just underrated. Like it's more accepted in baseball, you know what I mean? But for some reason it doesn't get the proper respect in terms of value for basketball. I think it's I think it's a sneaky play. And it is a sticker. That's the one thing I don't like about it. But you know what? For Luka, I'll look the other way. You know, like if he becomes a generational player, people aren't going to quibble about it being a sticker or a non-sticker. You know, it's just going to be worth. You know, it might even be the one that they can get because it'll be cheaper than an on-card auto, but it'll still be worth something, right? So if Luka becomes a generational player, the sticker auto PSA 10 could be. 2018 Prizm could be 10K, let's say, right? And you know, the on-card autos could be 20, 30, but who's going to be able to afford that?
Isn't the optic auto the only on-card auto?
Yeah. How much does the optic one go for?
Because
it's a good question.
It's more. I think it's lower pop.
Like double?
Isn't the Contenders auto also on-card?
Contenders is all on-card. I was just thinking between Prizm and optic and select.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Clark, I agree with you. I think rookie autos are underrated in basketball. I agree. I think sticker autos are overrated.
You know, I'll agree to that too. But for certain players, I'll make an exception, like Luka.
Ooh.
But
I like it. Regardless, I like it. Yeah. It's good comparison.
Cool. All right. That wraps up our show for this Tuesday. Again, we'd like to thank all our listeners and subscribers to our podcast. If you haven't rated our podcast and you enjoyed this episode, we really appreciate it if you gave us 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcast. And we'll be back for another new episode next week. We'll see you then. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.